Did you enter Sasha's apartment that night?
No.
Do you know who caused Sasha's death?
No.
Before this year, did you ever threaten anyone with physical harm?
No.
Did you cause the death of Sasha?
No.
People sleep peacefully at night, feeling safe and secure, knowing that outside their building, there is an armed security guard who is sworn to protect them. They trust that this person would lay down his life to keep them safe. But what if the very person you trust with your life is the one plotting to take it? What if the person you rely on to guard your home is the very monster you should fear? That's exactly what happened when Stephen Duxbury, a security guard who was supposed to be the protector, turned into the predator. This man brutally murdered 27-year-old Sasha Samsudian in 2015. The most shocking part here is that Sasha was strangled to death inside her own apartment, a place she should have been safest. The building had CCTV cameras, and her door was secured with a pin lock known only to her. So how did the security guard manage to kill her inside her locked apartment?
Okay, so when was the last time you had
Contact with her?
Yeah, what was it, the night before?
Yeah, it was Friday night.
Okay, so when you first had contact with her on Friday night,
Yep.
What was the situation?
I had been doing a perimeter patrol, and I had come upon 3 girls that were at the Marks and North Orange entrance, and looked like they were trying to get inside the building. So I'm like, "Evening, ladies, having an issue with the thing?" And then kind of chuckling because I see that happen all the time with drugs.
Sasha with 407 Apartments TV. I'm here at the Edge Orlando Apartments near UCF, so let's go check out what they have to offer.
Sasha Samsudian was like any other young professional, energetic and fun, who was living her life in Orlando, Florida. She had recently moved into Uptown Place, which is an upscale apartment complex with all the luxurious kind of amenities and good security. Sasha was doing great in her career as a social media manager, and she had an active social life. What we are trying to say is that her life was on track, and she had every reason to feel safe and secure in her new home. But on the night of October 16th, 2015, that sense of security was shattered. That night, Sasha went out with her friends to celebrate a local football game. They had fun, as they always did. They laughed, danced, toasted to their team's victory, and also drank as much as their stomachs allowed them. As the night wore on, Sasha began to feel the effects of the alcohol and decided to call it a night. She said her goodbyes and headed back to her apartment alone, something she had done countless times before without a second thought. But this time was different. This time, someone was watching her. Stephen Duxbury was a security guard at Uptown Place, a job that required him to keep the residents safe. He was supposed to be the one they could rely on, the one who would stand between them and danger. But on that night, he became the danger. As Sasha made her way back to the building, Duxbury spotted her. She was visibly intoxicated as she was struggling to find her keycard and remember her apartment access code. Instead of helping her like he was supposed to, Duxbury saw an opportunity to prey on someone vulnerable.
I'm sorry, you gotta read them out loud.
Oh, sorry, sure. Okay, so you have the right to remain silent. Initial. Anything I say may be used against me in court. Initial. I have the right to talk to a lawyer before and during the questioning. Initial.
Well, on the footage, we can clearly see Duxbury following Sasha. But as per Duxbury, he was simply trying to help Sasha. He just offered to escort her to her apartment out of concern for her safety. But we all know that was not the truth. The night ended and morning came. The next morning, Sasha was supposed to meet a friend for breakfast. When she didn't show up, her friend was not immediately alarmed. She thought maybe Sasha had overslept, or maybe she was still feeling the effects of the night before. But then too many hours went by, and Sasha was not picking up her calls. That's when her friend began to worry about her. She texted her, she called her, but Sasha didn't answer. By lunchtime, her friend had already started to panic. She decided to call the police. The police arrived at the building for a welfare check. They broke into Sasha's apartment. At first, they noticed that the room was tidy, and there were no signs of a struggle. But as they moved further into the apartment, they noticed something strange. There was a blanket on the bed that was oddly bundled up as if something had been hastily hidden beneath it. When the police lifted the blanket, they found her. They found her dead. Investigation into Sasha's murder began immediately. Her body was sent for autopsy, and the medical examiner found out that Sasha was strangled to death. They also found someone else's DNA on her neck and chest. From the very start, there were more questions than answers. How did someone get into Sasha's apartment? The door had been locked with a PIN code that only Sasha knew. How did the killer manage to bypass the security measures of a supposedly secure building? And most importantly, who could have done something so horrific? The police did not have any luck with finding proof either. They found out that the apartment had been cleaned. Yes, cleaned with bleach, almost as if the killer knew exactly what he was doing. There were no fingerprints, no hairs, no obvious signs of forced entry. But the police kept looking. They knew that at some point the killer had had to slip. He had had to leave some proof. And yes, he did. The police found a fingerprint on the underside of the toilet seat lid. It was a small detail, easily overlooked, but it would prove to be the key to solving the case. They also found a footprint, not for the whole shoe, but it was still a good piece of evidence. As soon as Sasha's body was found, the police knew they were dealing with a brutal and calculated murder. But figuring out who was responsible was not going to be easy. The first thing that confused them was the fact that there was no sign of forced entry into Sasha's apartment. That immediately raised a red flag. This meant that whoever killed her either knew her personally or had some way of gaining access to her apartment without breaking in.
This is very sad, and our biggest thing is we really do want to solve this, and I hope that anyone that sees this picture and that can recognize her that night, just to please give us a call.
The police started by talking to Anthony Roper. This was the friend who had requested the welfare check that led to the discovery of Sasha's body. Turns out, Roper was with Sasha on the night she went out, and he was the last person she had seen before she returned home. Roper explained that they hung out the last night at Attic Bar, had a good time, and that Sasha left around 12:30 a.m. to go back to her apartment. When she didn't respond to his messages the next morning, he got worried and called for a welfare check. The police verified Roper's story. He was genuinely concerned about Sasha, and there was nothing in his behavior or timeline to suggest he was involved in her death. Next, the detectives needed to figure out how Sasha got home and what happened when she arrived. Uptown Place, where Sasha lived, was a modern complex with digital key codes for each unit, security cameras, and a 24/7 security guard on duty. All this security, yet Sasha was dead in her own apartment. The police could not access the CCTV footage right away, so they started interviewing people who might have seen her that night. Stephen Duxbury told police that he saw Sasha and 2 other women at the entrance of the building. According to Duxbury, Sasha did not have her ID or key fob, but another resident buzzed in and Sasha followed. He claimed he last saw her at her apartment door, fumbling with the key code. Well, his story seems simple and straight, but the police were not so sure. To cross-check Duxbury's story, the police needed to find the 2 women who were with Sasha. They put out a public appeal, and fortunately, the woman, Julia Goff, and her roommate came forward. They told the police that they saw Sasha walking and thought she looked pretty intoxicated, so they offered her a ride in their Uber. Once they got to Uptown Place, they saw the security guard, Stephen Duxbury, and made sure Sasha was inside before they left. The women's account matched what Duxbury had said, so at this point, the police had to keep digging. The investigators then focused on another resident who had entered the building right before Sasha. Using the digital key logs, they identified him and brought him in for questioning. He confirmed that he saw Sasha for a split second in the hallway. He said that when he saw Sasha, she was clearly drunk. He did not see anything unusual, so he went into his apartment. The police took a DNA sample from him just to be thorough, but it did not match anything from the crime scene. This guy was in the clear. The detectives also realized that Sasha's phone was missing, but it was synced to her iPad. This provided another clue. The police found out that her last text was sent at 5:12 a.m. to her high school friend Ben. The police called in Ben for an interview. They even took his DNA and checked his alibi. But then Ben was also cleared. As it turns out, he was nowhere near Sasha when she was killed. At this point, the police had no clue who had brutally killed Sasha. But one thing was becoming clear. Whoever killed her had access to her apartment, either through trickery or because they were in a position of trust. By this time, all the other possible suspects had been cleared. Now the focus of the investigation began to narrow in on Stephen Duxbury, the security guard. His story had seemed believable at first, But the more the police looked into it, the more they found things that didn't quite add up. For example, he claimed he had just been doing his job, and he escorted Sasha to her apartment and then left her there. But think about it. Why would a security guard, whose entire job is to protect residents, walk away from a young woman who was clearly too intoxicated to even open her own door? It didn't add up. If Duxbury was there to help, why did he just leave her alone in the hallway? This was the first sign that something wasn't right. Then came the CCTV footage, and this was where things really started to fall apart for Duxbury. The footage didn't show him escorting Sasha to her door and then leaving, as he claimed. No, it showed him entering and leaving the building multiple times throughout the night. What was he doing? Why was he going back and forth? It was as if he was checking in on something, or someone. This was a big red flag, and it made the investigators start to question everything Duxbury had told them. After that, the police looked into the digital key logs for Sasha's apartment. These logs revealed that someone had tampered with the locks. And who had the knowledge and access to do that? Duxbury, of course. This was not something just anyone could pull off. It required someone with inside knowledge of the building's security systems. And that pointed the finger directly at Duxbury. If that was not enough, there was more. The CCTV footage also caught Duxbury on camera leaving the building after his shift ended at 6 a.m., but he was not just leaving with his regular belongings. He was seen carrying 2 large plastic garbage bags. This was odd because Duxbury had never been seen taking out trash during his shifts before. And when the police looked closer, they realized that the bags matched the ones found in Sasha's apartment. It was starting to look like Duxbury was trying to get rid of something that could tie him to the crime. By this point, the police were all but convinced that Duxbury was involved, but they needed to be sure, so they brought him back in for more questioning. This time, they asked him to take a polygraph test, and he agreed.
All right, the test is about to begin. Please remain completely still and answer each question with a simple yes or no. Is your first name Stephen?
Yes.
Do you work for Vital Security?
Yes.
Do you now live in Port Orange?
Yes.
Do you know who caused Sasha's death?
No.
Before this year, did you ever threaten anyone with physical harm?
No.
Did you cause the death of Sasha?
No.
Did you remove any items from Sasha's apartment?
No.
Before last summer, have you ever lost control of your behavior because of your temper?
No.
His answers about what happened to Sasha sounded true to ears, but the polygraph machine was not ready to believe him. The machine flagged his responses as deceptive. Duxbury was hiding something, and the investigators knew it. During their continued investigation, the police uncovered other evidence. They found out that Duxbury had reset his phone to factory settings shortly after Sasha's murder. Now, why would someone do that unless they were trying to erase something incriminating? The timing was way too convenient, and it only added to the growing suspicion. Then came the bombshell. The police obtained a search warrant for Duxbury's home and phone records. They found out that on the morning of Sasha's murder, Duxbury had searched online for how to override a digital deadbolt lock, the same kind of lock that was on Sasha's apartment door. This was in no way just a random search. It was a clear sign that Duxbury had planned this. He knew exactly how to get into her apartment without forcing his way in. With all this evidence, the CCTV footage showing his suspicious movements, the tampered key logs, the garbage bags, the failed polygraph, the phone reset, and the damning internet search, the police were confident they had their man, but they needed one more piece to seal the deal. A match between Duxbury's fingerprints and the one found on the toilet seat lid in Sasha's apartment. When they finally got the results, it was a perfect match, and the DNA found on Sasha's body matched Duxbury too.
October 17th, Sasha Samsadian was found murdered in her apartment. Today, our detectives have arrested Stephen Duxbury, the security guard from Uptown Apartments, in connection with this case. Stephen Duxbury is charged with first-degree murder, sexual battery, and burglary to an occupied dwelling.
So, on October 30th, 2015, Stephen Duxbury was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, attempted sexual battery, and burglary. He was convicted on all charges and given 2 life sentences, plus an additional 15 years. Duxbury thought he could outsmart everyone, that his role as a security guard would protect him from suspicion. But in the end, it was his very position of trust that led to his downfall. The man who was supposed to keep Sasha safe had become her predator, and justice was finally served.